Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Ever blasted a pop song and felt a chord just hit different? What if I told you that feeling was invented 500 years ago? From the harmonies in your favorite tracks to the very way music reaches your ears, the Renaissance music revolution is still playing on repeat. Today, we're taking a deep dive into how a 16th century technological innovation changed everything, why your playlist has more in common with a Tudor court than you might think, and how a musical rebellion gave us the singer-songwriter tradition. This is the incredible story of how the Renaissance built the soundtrack to our modern world, and how changes made between 1400 and 1600 still influence every song you hear today. The Renaissance, meaning rebirth, was nothing short of a cultural and intellectual earthquake that transformed Europe between approximately 1400 and 1600. This era represented a dramatic shift from the strictly religious focus of the medieval period to a renewed fascination with the artistic and philosophical ideals of classical Greece and Rome. It was an age of unprecedented exploration in every sense of the word. Pioneers were mapping the globe. Scientists were beginning to understand the natural world through observation and experimentation, and artists were discovering new ways to capture the beauty and realism of human experience. This spirit of innovation and discovery didn't just affect painting and literature and science, it fundamentally revolutionized the very art of music, setting the stage for the Western musical traditions we know and love today. This cultural transformation was driven by several key historical events that directly shaped the music of the time in profound ways. In 1455, Johannes Gutenberg's invention of the movable type printing press began a communication revolution that would eventually transform every aspect of knowledge distribution. While not immediately used for music, its concept paved the way for Ottaviano Petrucci, who in 1501 published the first significant collection of polyphonic music using a similar three-impression process. This was nothing short of a monumental shift in how music was created and shared. For the first time in history, complex musical compositions could be accurately reproduced and distributed on a mass scale, moving music beyond the walls of churches and aristocratic courts and into the homes of a growing literate middle class. This new accessibility fostered the rise of amateur music making and allowed compositions to spread across Europe with incredible speed, creating a cross-pollination of musical ideas from Italy to England that simply wouldn't have been possible before. Further reshaping the musical landscape was the Protestant Reformation, which began in 1517 when Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg. This religious schism had immediate and profound musical consequences that would echo through centuries. Luther, himself a musician and composer, championed congregational singing in the vernacular language, leading to the creation of the Lutheran chorale, simple, robust hymns that the entire congregation could sing together. This represented a dramatic contrast to the complex Latin polyphony of the Catholic Church and signaled a fundamental democratization of sacred music. Meanwhile, Columbus's famed voyage to the New World in 1492, while not having immediate musical impact, symbolized the era's expanding horizons and initiated a period of cultural exchange that would, over time, introduce new rhythms, instruments, and sounds into the European musical consciousness, slowly weaving a more diverse and rich tapestry of musical influence. When we consider these developments together, the rediscovery of classical ideas, the revolutionary power of the printing press, and the shifting religious and social structures, we can see how they combined to create the perfect environment for an artistic explosion. Music was transforming from a mathematical science to a powerful form of personal and emotional expression. This foundation of accessibility, innovation, and cultural exchange, built during the Renaissance, forms the very bedrock upon which our modern music industry still stands today. The Renaissance era wasn't just a rebirth of visual art and learning. It was essentially a laboratory for musical experimentation that fundamentally rewrote the rules of composition, performance, and distribution. The innovations developed between 1400 and 1600 are so deeply embedded in our modern musical DNA that we often experience them without realizing their ancient origins. From the very chords that form the backbone of a pop song to the way we organize orchestras and even how we distribute music commercially, the Renaissance gave us the foundational tools of Western music as we know it. The most profound revolution was undoubtedly harmonic. In medieval music, harmony was built primarily on what were called perfect intervals like fourths, fifths, and octaves, which were considered the only true consonances. Intervals like thirds and sixths were treated with suspicion and heard as dissonant and unstable. Renaissance composers, however, developed a different ear and began to embrace these warmer, sweeter intervals, establishing them as essential building blocks of harmony. This dramatic shift led to the development of triadic harmony, the concept of building chords in stacked thirds, which remains the absolute cornerstone of harmony today. Without this Renaissance breakthrough, we would have none of the chord progressions that define everything from Beethoven sonatas to Beatles tunes to modern hip-hop beats. Imagine hearing a medieval progression using only open fifths. It sounds hollow and ancient to our ears. But the moment you add a third to create a major or minor chord, it instantly bridges a 500-year gap to sound familiar and foundational, because the Renaissance essentially defined what sounds right to our ears. This musical revolution was powered by an equally important technological one: the printing press. Before this innovation, all music was painstakingly hand-copied by scribes, making it expensive, rare, and prone to error and variation. This changed dramatically in 1501 when Ottaviano Petrucci published the first significant collection of polyphonic music using movable type. Suddenly, complex compositions could be accurately reproduced and distributed across Europe with unprecedented speed and accuracy. This was truly the genesis of the music industry as we know it. Petrucci's invention began the process of music commercialization, creating a market for sheet music that would eventually evolve into the publishing industry we have today. Stacks of Renaissance music books transitioning into vinyl records and streaming icons. This trajectory, from printed sheet music to recorded vinyl to digital CDs to today's streaming platforms, all started in the Renaissance workshop. Furthermore, as music was printed and needed to be readable by musicians across different regions, notation itself became standardized, evolving into the system of clefs, note values, and bar lines we still use today. It's remarkable to think that a musician from the 21st century can read a score from the 16th century because of standardization that occurred during the Renaissance. The sound of the Renaissance was also defined by a new wave of instrument development and orchestration that would shape music for centuries to come. This period saw the refinement of instruments into the families we recognize today. The violin family began to supersede the viols, precursors to the trombone, then called sackbut, and trumpet were refined, and the harpsichord became a vital tool for harmony and composition. Perhaps more importantly, Renaissance musicians developed the concept of the consort groups of instruments from the same family. This idea of grouping like instruments is the direct ancestor of the modern orchestral section. The string section, the woodwind section, and the brass section all owe their organizational principle to Renaissance consorts. While the instruments themselves have evolved dramatically over time, the foundational blueprint of the orchestra was essentially drawn over 400 years ago during this remarkable period. Finally, the very texture of music was transformed during the Renaissance in ways that continue to influence composers today. Medieval music was often monophonic, a single melodic line like Gregorian chant, or homophonic, a melody with simple accompaniment. Renaissance composers mastered polyphony, the complex, beautiful art of weaving multiple independent melodic lines together simultaneously. Composers like Josquin des Prez pioneered imitative counterpoint, where a melodic idea introduced in one voice is then echoed by others, creating a rich, intricate tapestry of sound that was revolutionary for its time. This breakthrough was not some dead end in music history. It was the essential precursor to the complex fugues of Bach and Handel in the Baroque era that followed. And its legacy echoes loudly today in unexpected places. The brilliant vocal harmonies in the Beatles' Because, where John, Paul, and George weave three independent melodic lines, is a direct descendant of Renaissance polyphony. This texture appears regularly in complex film scores, progressive rock, and a cappella groups, proving that this Renaissance innovation remains a powerful tool for creating depth and beauty in music. In essence, the Renaissance gave us the very language of modern music. It defined our harmonic vocabulary, built the first distribution network for musical scores, designed the organizational blueprint for our orchestras, and taught us how to weave multiple melodies into a complex, beautiful whole. Every time we strum a guitar chord read sheet music or listen to layered harmonies in a song, we are hearing the enduring echo of the Renaissance, a musical revolution that continues to shape our sonic world 5 centuries later. Beyond inventing new harmonies and instruments, the Renaissance era gifted the world with entirely new musical genres and forms that would establish creative blueprints still followed centuries later. These structures, designed to express the full spectrum of human experience from the divine to the playful, effectively organized the musical world into categories we still recognize and use today. In the realm of sacred music, composers perfected 2 major forms that remain pillars of classical music. The motet, a polyphonic choral composition based on a sacred Latin text, became the premier vehicle for intricate counterpoint and profound emotional expression within the church service. Its spirit of layered, contemplative, sacred singing lives on directly in the modern concert hall, heard in the choral works of contemporary composers like Arvo Pärt and John Rutter, and even in the complex harmonic structures of gospel music. Similarly, the Mass, a musical setting of the 5 core texts of the Catholic liturgy, Kyrie, Gloria, Credo, Sanctus, and Agnus Dei, was elevated to a high art form by composers like Palestrina and Byrd. The tradition of composing masses never actually died out. It continues to be a significant undertaking for modern classical composers, creating a direct artistic lineage connecting the 21st century to the 16th through a continuous liturgical tradition. Perhaps the most far-reaching sacred innovation, however, came from the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther's introduction of congregational singing, known as the Lutheran chorale, represented a revolutionary democratization of music. These were simple, sturdy hymns sung in the vernacular language by the entire congregation, not just a trained choir. This concept is the direct ancestor of the modern hymn book and all congregational worship music found in churches across the world today, making it one of the Renaissance's most enduring everyday musical contributions that many people experience regularly without realizing its historical significance. Secular music flourished with equal brilliance during the Renaissance, moving beyond the church walls into courts and homes of wealthy patrons. The most iconic secular form was undoubtedly the madrigal. These were polyphonic secular compositions, often for 4 to 6 voices, that set poetry to music with an intense focus on emotional expression. Their most distinctive feature was word painting, the musical technique of literally illustrating a word or phrase in the text. For example, a melodic line would ascend on the word ascend, or the music would turn dissonant on the word pain, or a quick musical passage might represent laughter. This desire to amplify the emotional and narrative content of poetry through music establishes the madrigal as the direct forerunner of the modern singer-songwriter tradition. When a pop artist like Adele uses a vocal crack to convey heartbreak, or a composer like Lin-Manuel Miranda matches a musical phrase to the natural rhythm of speech, they are employing the same principles Renaissance madrigalists pioneered 5 centuries ago. Alongside the madrigal, the French chanson, simply meaning song, refined the art of setting poetry to music, serving as a clear ancestor to the later German Lied and the entire tradition of the art song in classical music. For dance, the Renaissance established the practice of grouping structured dances into pairs and suites that would influence musical form for centuries. Dances like the slow, stately pavane were often followed by a quicker, more vigorous dance like the galliard, creating a satisfying contrast in mood and rhythm for both dancers and listeners. This concept of organizing instrumental movements by rhythm, tempo, and character evolved directly into the Baroque dance suite and, later, the multi-movement structures of sonatas and symphonies. The core idea of sequencing different rhythmic feels to maintain audience engagement and create emotional journey is a principle that remains absolutely fundamental to modern music culture, from the deliberate track listing of a classical album to the carefully curated flow of an electronic dance music, EDM, set in a club today. The Renaissance did not merely create music that was of its time. It built the foundational frameworks for how we organize musical thought itself. By establishing distinct, powerful genres for spiritual devotion, personal expression, and physical movement, Renaissance musicians provided a template that continues to guide composers, performers, and listeners to this day. The DNA of a modern worship song, a pop ballad, a classical suite, and a dance club track can all be traced back to the creative explosion of this remarkable era that redefined what music could be and do. The Renaissance wasn't just about what music was written, but about how it was performed, and this period witnessed a revolutionary shift in performance practice that fundamentally altered the relationship between the performer, the composer, and the audience. These changes elevated music from a functional art to an expressive one, establishing conventions of technique and expression that are second nature to musicians today. In the realm of vocal music, the Renaissance saw the perfection of a cappella singing as we understand it. While often associated with later periods, it was Renaissance composers like those in the Sistine Chapel who refined pure vocal polyphony to its highest form, prioritizing blend, clarity, and the intricate balancing of independent melodic lines without instrumental accompaniment. This mastery of unaccompanied harmony is the direct ancestor of every modern vocal ensemble, from collegiate a cappella groups to professional choirs like Chanticleer that specialize in this exacting art form. Even more impactful was the development and refinement of word painting, also known as madrigalism. This was the technique of using music to literally illustrate the meaning of a specific word in the text, making the emotional content immediately audible. A melodic line would ascend on the word heaven or ascend. It would descend into a low register for hell or grave. The harmony might become dissonant and the rhythm slow on the word pain or grief, and quick, bright passages might represent laughter or light. This breakthrough was monumental because it represented music's evolution towards being a narrative, emotional force, rather than just mathematical or devotional expression. It established the principle that music could and should amplify text to enhance its meaning and emotional impact. This legacy is everywhere in modern music, often in ways we feel without necessarily analyzing. It's in the soaring key change that often accompanies the word rise, in a power ballad, the ominous low brass that accompanies a villain's entrance in a Disney film score, and the complex emotional shifts within Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody, where the music dramatically changes character to mirror the lyrics' journey from despair to operatic fury to resigned acceptance. The Renaissance planted the seed for music to tell a story and convey specific emotions through deliberate compositional choices rather than accident. Simultaneously, instrumental music experienced its coming-of-age story during the Renaissance. For centuries, instruments primarily doubled vocal parts or provided simple accompaniment for dance, existing in a supporting role rather than as vehicles for artistic expression in their own right. The Renaissance breakthrough was the emergence of music written specifically for instruments, conceived to exploit their unique sonic and technical characteristics rather than simply adapting vocal lines. This was the birth of instrumental music as an independent art form worthy of serious artistic consideration. Composers began writing pieces that were idiomatic for specific instruments like the lute, the viol, or the keyboard, freeing instrumental composition from its reliance on vocal models and allowing the unique qualities of each instrument to shine. This independence fostered an environment where virtuosity could develop in unprecedented ways. As music became more complex and instrument-specific, technique had to rapidly expand to meet new demands. Manuals on ornamentation, fingering, and bowing were published for the first time, and the first true instrumental virtuosos began to gain fame and travel across Europe, their reputations preceding them. This created a quan scinda, quan ex unde, brand new concept, the instrumental soloist as star performer. The idea that a single performer, through technical mastery and expressive interpretation, could be the focal point of a composition and command audience attention was essentially a Renaissance invention. This figure is the direct progenitor of every modern soloist we celebrate today, from the concert pianist performing a Rachmaninoff concerto with a full orchestra to the rock guitarist commanding a stadium with an epic solo. The Renaissance stage, once dominated solely by the human voice, now made room for the instrumental hero, a legacy that continues to define countless musical performances across all genres and traditions. In essence, the Renaissance transformed the very act of musical performance itself. It taught singers to be not just pious chanters, but expressive storytellers through a cappella, precision, and word painting. It liberated instruments from their supporting role, creating a platform for technical brilliance and the cult of the soloist that remains powerful today. These evolutionary leaps redefined performance from an act of reproduction into one of interpretation and emotional communication, setting the standard for what we, as a modern audience, expect and cherish from a captivating musical performance. Every time we are moved by an unaccompanied voice or mesmerized by a breathtaking instrumental solo, we are witnessing the enduring power of a performance revolution that began over 5 centuries ago. The Renaissance was more than an artistic movement. It was a social revolution that fundamentally altered music's role in society. The changes during this period reshaped who made music, why it was made, and how it was consumed, creating a cultural ecosystem that directly mirrors our modern world in surprising ways. The most impactful change began with the technology of distribution. Ottaviano Petrucci's successful printing of polyphonic music in 1501 did for music what Gutenberg had done for texts. It democratized access in previously unimaginable ways. Before this innovation, music was essentially a luxury item, hand-copied and exclusively owned by the church and aristocracy. Petrucci's innovation made scores affordable and accessible to the educated merchant and middle classes for the first time. This was truly the genesis of the entire music industry as we understand it. The desire to own and play the latest madrigal or dance tune created the first commercial market for music, establishing a publishing model that would evolve through printed sheet music, recorded vinyl digital CDs, and into the streaming economy of today. Services like Spotify and Apple Music are the direct descendants of Petrucci's Venetian workshop, all built on the same revolutionary principle of delivering music directly to the individual consumer. This new access fueled a massive secularization of music that would permanently change its cultural position. For centuries, music's primary purpose had been liturgical, serving the church's needs above all else. The Renaissance saw it explode into royal courts and, crucially, into private homes. With printed music now available, amateur music making became a widespread leisure activity and a mark of refinement for the middle class. Families and friends would gather around a table to sing madrigals or play consorts of viols for their own enjoyment and entertainment. This cultural shift created the foundational concept of making music for personal pleasure and social connection at home, rather than only for religious or official functions. It is the direct precursor to every modern garage band practicing in a basement, every family singing around a piano, and every musician posting acoustic covers online today. The Renaissance established the home as a legitimate space for musical creativity and enjoyment, separate from the church or the concert hall. As music became a valued secular art, the status of its creators was elevated in society. The composer transformed from a skilled craftsman, essentially an anonymous servant of the church, into a recognized creative artist whose individual voice mattered. Figures like Josquin des Prez were celebrated across Europe, their names known and their artistic choices debated among patrons and enthusiasts. This established the potent concept of the celebrity artist, whose individual genius was worth acknowledging and celebrating. This paradigm is the bedrock of our modern musical culture. The fame of a Renaissance composer like Palestrina, sought after by patrons and publishers across Europe, directly parallels the superstar status of a modern pop artist or film composer like Hans Zimmer. The Renaissance created the idea that the creator's identity was intrinsically tied to the value and meaning of the music itself. A concept that seems obvious to us now but was revolutionary at the time. Furthermore, this new accessibility demanded and fostered an expansion of music education that would have lasting implications. Musical literacy, once a skill largely confined to the clergy, now spread to the aristocracy and the upwardly mobile middle class. The ability to read notation became a valuable social skill and mark of refinement. This created a sustained cultural need for music tutors and instructional methods, laying the groundwork for the modern music education system we have today, from private lessons and school band programs to university conservatories. The Renaissance belief that musical knowledge was a valuable part of a well-rounded education is a principle that continues to this day in our educational systems. These historical shifts are not just abstract concepts. Their evidence is audible in the music we listen to right now. Renaissance singers visually emphasizing lyrics with gestures. A prime modern example is in Adele's "Someone Like You." The lyric, "Never mind, I'll find someone like you," is delivered with a descending melodic line, fade between Renaissance madrigal singer and modern Adele performance. Renaissance madrigal performance in candlelit hall. Renaissance trio performing with clear triadic harmony. Renaissance manuscript showing chords alongside modern guitar. For instance, the IV-via-V progression relies entirely on the principle of chords built in thirds, a Renaissance innovation that replaced the medieval preference for open fifths and fourths. Renaissance church scene with congregation singing. Its most direct descendant is the modern worship hymn, but its structural DNA is also present in the massive sing-along anthems at the heart of rock and pop. Renaissance congregation singing blending into stadium rock concert. This is the secular, arena-ready evolution of the communal singing spirit Martin Luther instilled in the Reformation, proving that the Renaissance desire to connect people through shared musical experience remains one of its most powerful and enduring legacies in our modern world. Renaissance congregation scene morphing into modern concert crowd singing together. From the chords that structure our favorite songs to the very way we experience music as both creators and consumers, the Renaissance scroll glowing and turning into modern sheet music. These innovations weren't just historical footnotes. They became the foundation upon which all Western music was built, proving that the most powerful revolutions aren't always loudest in their moment, but sometimes echo across centuries, continually reshaping our world in ways both obvious and subtle. Renaissance hall echoes visually transforming into modern concert hall. Renaissance instruments fading into modern headphones and music waves. If you enjoyed this journey, let me know down in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. Hit that like button. It really helps the video reach more people. And make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive. We've got plenty more strange stories from the past coming your way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.